If you've been checking your hairline in the mirror, pulling your hair back under bright light, zooming in on old photos trying to compare, this video's for you. Because most men don't actually know they're balding when it starts. They just have this feeling that something looks different. And by the time it becomes obvious, they've already lost more hair than they needed to. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the real early signs of balding. Not myths, not paranoia, but the actual changes that tell you whether this is normal or the beginning of male pattern hair loss. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the obvious one, your hairline. Yes, everyone expects this, but there's a right way and a wrong way to judge it. For most men with male pattern baldness, the first noticeable change happens at the temples. The corners of the hairline slowly start moving back, creating that classic M shape. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's dramatic, but it almost never happens overnight. Now here's the important part. Not everyone naturally has a perfectly straight, sharp hairline. Some men have naturally higher temples. Some have uneven corners. Some never had that teenage straight-across hairline to begin with. So the worst thing you can do is compare your hairline to another guy. Don't compare yourself to a celebrity. Don't compare yourself to your friend. Compare yourself to you. Go look at photos from 1, 2, 3 years ago. Same angles, similar lighting. Ask yourself, do I have noticeably less density at the temples than I did before? Has the shape clearly changed? If the corners are thinner than they used to be, not just shaped differently, but thinner, that's usually one of the first real signs. Hairline recession is about progression, not perfection. It's not about having a flawless straight line. It's about whether that line is slowly moving backward over time. Next, the length of your shedding hairs. Now this is one most people completely overlook. Shedding alone does not mean you're going bald. Every single person, men, women, thick hair, thin hair, sheds around 50 to 100 hairs per day. That's normal. That's just the hair cycle. So if you're seeing hair in the shower, on your pillow, or on your desk, that by itself doesn't prove anything. What matters is the type of hair you're shedding. Here's what most people don't realize. When you're balding, hair doesn't just fall out at full thickness. It shrinks first. This process is called miniaturization. Because of your genetic sensitivity to DHT, the hormone linked to male pattern hair loss, affected follicles produce thinner, shorter, weaker hairs over time. So instead of shedding long, thick, healthy strands, you may start noticing shorter, finer, almost wispy hairs falling out. That's the key difference. If you have medium or long hair, and the strands you're shedding are noticeably shorter than the rest of your hair, that's a red flag. It means those follicles are producing miniaturized hairs before they fall out. And miniaturization is the real mechanism behind male pattern hair loss. So don't just count hairs, look at them. Are they full length and thick, or are they thinner and shorter than they should be? That detail tells you much more than the number ever will.
Diffuse thinning, the real warning sign. Now this is the one that most men eventually notice, diffuse thinning. This isn't about just the temples, it's not just the crown, it's when the overall density across the top of your scalp starts to decrease. Instead of one clear bald spot, everything just looks slightly weaker. You might notice that under bright lighting, your scalp is suddenly more visible than it used to be. Your hair might not hold styling product the same way. It might feel lighter, flatter, or less dense when you run your hands through it. That's because diffuse thinning affects multiple follicles across the scalp at the same time. And here's why this one is important. Hairline recession can be subtle and slow. Crown changes can be confusing, but diffuse thinning changes how your entire head of hair looks and feels. If you remember your hair feeling thick and full, like a solid wall, and now it feels more see-through, especially in certain lighting, that's not just perception, that's density loss. And density loss is one of the clearest indicators that male pattern hair loss is progressing. Again, the key question isn't, can I see some scalp? The question is, can I see more scalp than I used to? The wet hair test. Now let's talk about one of the biggest reality checks for most men, wet hair. A lot of guys first notice something is off when they step out of the shower, look in the mirror, and suddenly their scalp looks way more visible than usual. And there's a reason for that. When your hair gets wet, it clumps together, it loses volume, it lies flatter against your scalp. So naturally, more skin shows through. That happens to everyone, even kids with full, thick hair. So seeing some scalp when your hair is soaking wet does not automatically mean you're balding. But here's where it becomes useful. Wet hair removes the illusion of volume. If you compare how your hair looks wet now versus how it looked wet a few years ago, and you clearly see more scalp than before, that can be a sign of reduced density. Water doesn't create thinning, it reveals it. The key, again, is comparison over time. Not can I see my scalp when it's wet, but do I see significantly more scalp than I used to when it's wet? If the difference is obvious to you, not just in one bad lighting moment, but consistently, that's when it's worth paying attention. Family history and the psychological reality. Now let's talk about genetics. Male pattern baldness is hereditary, that part is true, but there are a lot of myths around it. You've probably heard it only comes from your mother's side, or it skips a generation. Both of those are oversimplified and not scientifically reliable. Hair loss is influenced by multiple genes from both sides of your family. So what should you actually look at? Look at the men in your family, your dad, your grandfathers, your uncles, your brothers. If most of them experienced thinning or recession, your probability is higher. But, and this is important, it is not destiny. You can have a bald father and keep your hair. You can have a father with great hair and still lose yours. Genetics increase risk, they don't guarantee outcome. Now here's the part nobody likes to talk about. If you think you're balding, you probably are noticing something real. Most men sense subtle changes long before anyone else does. But instead of acknowledging it, they go into denial. I'm too young, it's just stress, it'll stop on its own. And then years pass, and by the time it becomes obvious, the loss is much harder and more expensive to address. The truth is, half the battle is simply being honest with yourself about what you're seeing. Not panicking, not obsessing, just objectively observing. What to do next? So now that you know what to look for, hairline changes, temple thinning, crown density, shedding patterns, wet hair checks, and family history, the question becomes, what do you actually do about it? Step 1. Start a photo record today. Same angles, same lighting, every few weeks. Photos are the most objective way to track changes. Your memory and friends can't compete with a visual record. Step 2. Compare yourself over time, not to other people. Everyone's hair grows differently. Your normal is your baseline. Look at your progress, that's what matters. Step 3. Act early if you notice consistent thinning. Even subtle changes matter. Treatments like finasteride, minoxidil, or combination approaches work best when started early. The sooner you address DHT and follicle miniaturization, the more hair you can preserve. Click the link on the description if you want a custom treatment. Step 4. Stay consistent and informed. Hair loss isn't about quick fixes or luck. It's a long-term game. Understand your scalp, understand your genetics, and use proven treatments correctly. The bottom line is don't ignore the signs. Half the battle is simply seeing the truth, accepting it, and taking action before it's too late. If you're serious about maintaining or regrowing your hair, start tracking, start learning, and start acting now. Your future self will thank you.